Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Chad Anderson, SpaceX investor and managing partner of Space Capital, to discuss the different segments within the broader space economy, how businesses can tap into these new opportunities, and how to build a career in the industry. Chad recently authored the book titled The Space Economy, a guide for investors, entrepreneurs, and aspiring professionals. It's great to have you with us, Chad. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Hi, Jill. Good to be here.
You got it. And the economic, political, and now strategic importance of the space economy can no longer be denied. And this is why we are seeing such exponential growth. Launch is the sexy thing, but where does the real action lie?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, most people talk about launch and emerging industries, what we call emerging industries, which are really, space stations and in-space manufacturing and resources in space and the lunar market. And that's all very exciting. And so it's easy to sort of pick up these storylines and run with them. But launch alone makes up about 9% of what's going on in the space economy. These emerging industries are really just 1% of all the capital and revenue that's being driven by the space economy. 90% of what's going on is within the satellites industry. And that is divided amongst three key space technology stacks: GPS, geospatial intelligence, and satellite communications. And these have driven over $250 billion in equity capital in the private markets over the last decade. And they are touching every aspect of our daily lives. I mean, all companies need to be thinking about how they are going to integrate space technology into their businesses. It is a horizontal that cuts across real estate and agriculture and shipping and gaming, and you name it, which is why our thesis and the way that we sum up the opportunity set is that in the same way that every company of today is a technology company, every company of tomorrow will be a space company, because it's going to make up a key part of what every industry is going to underpin the growth in all industries.
And Chad, you point out in the book that nascent markets like the space economy, they're exciting, they're dynamic, they're fast moving, but they're also prime breeding grounds for hucksters and bottom feeders. What should investors and aspiring professionals be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of part of the reason why I wrote the book in the first place. I never aspired to be an author, but Wiley reached out and saw some of the content we were putting out and convinced me to do it. And that speaks to, one of the main reasons why I did is that I've been at this for 10 years, focused on investing in this category. Before there was a whole lot going on back when SpaceX was making their first commercial launches. And I have seen prophetic individuals talking about, humans manifest destiny to be out amongst the stars, raising capital for far-fetched ideas like asteroid mining and some other things. And what I'm trying to do in this book is really to sort of ground our expectations, to know that, given a long enough timeline, all of these things are likely to happen. But as an investor, someone who's looking to build a career in this space, what are the opportunities that exist today? And the truth is that space technologies already are the invisible backbone of the world's largest industries. And will continue to be a key part of our economy in the decades to come. And so what's actually happening today is much more interesting than sort of the hype and what's going on. So how can you think about it? How can you get involved today? And what is providing value today? And where can you gain experience so that you can get involved in some of these larger, bigger picture things in the future?
What does the regulatory structure look like, and what will it take for it to be effective due to the rapid pace of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of exiting the Wild West stages of the space economy. I mean, everything we've been operating in space for decades, but it's only recently become a category for investment when SpaceX came online and broke the sort of death grip that the defense contractors had on the market. It was very limited, with a handful of defense contractors on one side and the government on the other. SpaceX removed those barriers to entry. We've since seen thousands of new companies getting started and getting funded. And so the market is now much more robust. There's a lot more activity and a lot more innovation happening. And so regulations are now starting to tighten up, as you'd expect to see. As I'm sure you remember, in the early days of ride sharing, chaos once reigned. Now that Uber is dominant, the regulatory environment is much more strict. Space is following the same pattern. And so the important thing is that, given the pace of innovation, that governments have a responsibility to adapt and help to safeguard and make sure that sustainable operations can take place in orbit without stifling innovation. And that's a really delicate balance, and one that I think, these private entrepreneurial companies have really engaged these government agencies early on. We go into this more in the book, but we're in a pretty good place with regards to the public-private partnerships from an economic perspective and a regulatory perspective.
Well, it's clearly encouraging to hear that smaller companies can be competitive with defense contractors. But Chad, what about venture momentum? We know it's been a bit of a challenge over the past 12 to 18 months as it relates to private markets and investing.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. The venture market has been having a tough time over the last year and a half. And that has certainly affected the investment into the space economy. Venture capital investors make up a significant portion of the investment dollars that's going into this category. But like I mentioned, space technologies are underpinning the world's largest industries. And what we're seeing actually is that as the world becomes more dynamic and uncertain, enterprises, business leaders and government leaders want more information when the world becomes more dynamic and uncertain. The conflict in Ukraine has really showcased the growing capabilities of commercial space companies, but we're seeing that, with supply chain issues and name it, any other sort of global phenomenon or impact at a global scale. Satellite and space technologies allow us to give us that vantage point from space, to give us that global perspective that allows us to address those short-term needs as well as long-term needs, such as our changing climate.
All right, Chad, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.